Good morning, Sunshine Country. It's now 19 minutes past the hour of 9 o'clock. Dan Miller with us from Building Rural Wealth. Good morning, Dan.
Hey, well, Milestone Financial Group. But, we are building rural wealth. That's all right, Aaron. Hey, it's Monday, all right?
It has been one of those mornings. I did get Dan Miller right. So
you did, yep.
Caleb Roebuck with us. Caleb, how are you this morning?
Hey, I'm doing good. Morning.
Well, I got to tell you, taxes suck. Okay, let's talk about this, Dan.
Well, and then here's what yours are trying to tell you. That's the title of our show today. Well, we just thought it was very apropos with being tax season. I mean, we're in the thick of tax season right now, and let's just say it out loud. Nobody looks forward to taxes. I mean, have you ever heard anybody say, "Man, I can't wait! I get to do my taxes"?
I have never heard that.
No, nobody, anybody. Nobody looks forward to doing them, paying them, anything. And we all work hard all year. And, maybe your income was solid, you got your bills paid, your business felt steady, whatever. Life felt pretty normal, and then tax season shows up, and suddenly, the numbers are like, man, this is not what I signed up for. This isn't what, And what's the shock? It's that tax bill, and guess what? It's not a mistake. It may be the first honest thing your finances have said to you all year. Because oftentimes we see taxes can expose gaps, misalignments, decisions that weren't maybe coordinated with everything else. And when it comes to tax season, pretending it's just bad luck, that only unfortunately helps it oftentimes to happen again next year. So today we're going to talk about what your tax bill may really be telling you and why thinking about this now may hurt a lot less than being surprised again next year.
Absolutely. Okay.
And Aaron, I've got to put the disclaimer out there. Remember, nothing that we take and say here today should be taken as tax advice. You got to speak with your own tax professional regarding your specific situation. But we do feel like there's some pretty good things to take away here regarding, how to work with your taxes and the rest of your financial picture.
Okay. Here we go. So why does it feel like a betrayal, Caleb?
It does kind of sometimes, we're all paying our fair share, but yeah, kind of like Dan said, when you get that bill at the end of the year, it kind of does. But, the truth is, taxes really aren't sneaky, if you think about it. But again, if you wait till the end of the year to look, they can be. But, they're kind of just late to the party, because they show up at the end of the year, like Dan said, hey, you're living, you're doing your business. Yep. And, my kind of point too is, doing your taxes at the end of the year is always a backward looking exercise. You're looking at what just happened for the past year, right. 3 months into the next year. So, and what we find is, people often make decisions in pieces too, which affect their tax bill. They might have their bank and investment accounts at one place here. They have their retirement accounts over here, and then they're making their household and business decisions over here and not, kind of looking at all the pieces or coordinating them together. And, it's hard for those things to talk to each other anyways, but your tax bill may be the moment that they all kind of scream back at you. That's when they all kind of come together and do show you what it is. And some examples of those surprises are, we've had a couple good years in the stock market, so you might have capital gains in your non-qualified investment accounts or your mutual funds. You might have sold an asset or inherited an asset, which can create another surprise bill either on your tax bill, or we're seeing a lot more also with like your Medicare tax bill or that IRMA tax and stuff too. Also, your business income might have changed, and you didn't realize it, and you didn't withhold enough throughout the year. All these create surprises where, hey, it's stuff that happened throughout the year that if you were thinking about it, they could have been. But these shocks also aren't judgment; life happens. It's often, like we said, kind of the truth arriving late. Because, like Dan said, the taxes aren't a mistake; they are kind of what they are, unfortunately. And, that may be the moment that your finances stop lying to you, but it's at your time to be like, all right, what is the truth and what is happening? How do I wrestle with this?
So what about emotionally if we ignore the signals that we're talking about, Dan? What are we looking at there?
Well, we've seen it happen a lot of times, and I know I've had to be, conscious of this myself. Sometimes if you ignore those signals that kind of come from your taxes, you may start second-guessing your past decisions. You may hesitate to make new investments or to take any chances and make any changes going forward. And, we've seen folks where, oh, man, I'm just going to hold on to my cash just in case. And they won't invest. They won't reinvest, So over time, this can build into a very defensive behavior. And you may want to stop planning for the future. You stop taking any calculated risks. You stop thinking ahead. So often the real cost isn't just dollars. It's anxiety, hesitation, and stress that may keep growing every year that you ignore the signals. So, again, not planning is more than just about the money.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of planning, so if perfection doesn't exist, Caleb, right? It's just not there. Perfection doesn't exist, but you can coordinate, you can plan, right? So tell me about that.
Yeah, exactly. Most people think, that the goal is to minimize or pay no taxes at all. And that sounds like a good goal, but that also can kind of be a trap later on down the road too. What we think the smarter goal is, coordination, not perfection, like you said, because in any plan, life is going to continue to happen. Tax laws are going to change, anything like that. But, coordinating and understanding, how one decision affects the other. Hey, how a business decision might affect my cash flow or my investment or my taxes, and it's looking at and accepting those trade-offs intentionally. When we talk about planning with folks, it is about trade-offs. Hey, if you want to retire earlier, then, hey, there's trade-offs to what you need to do of save more, spend less, or vice versa, But it's hard sometimes to always see that. And you do want to connect your investments, your income, your retirement strategies, and your goals to your tax person. But like Dan said, hey, that does take some coordination with, an advisor you're working with, your tax person, but also yourself and your spouse of what's going on. And that coordination planning, it's not going to eliminate taxes, but, our goal to help people with is to help reduce that shock, help reduce that stress of when it comes up. Like Dan said, nobody looks forward to, that April deadline, but, that feeling that your finances aren't lying to you, you are in control of what's happening throughout the year, and you can, take advantage of some of these things, or you're not just reacting to what your tax situation is at the end of the year. Especially if you're paying in or getting a refund. Again, there's things that getting a big refund can tell you that you need to do as well, too.
So when we talk about taxes, I think the tax code is 60 or 70,000 pages long. I mean, literally, I think it's somewhere in that range.
Mm-hmm.
It's just unbelievable. No one can know all that. So how do you even know, for the average person, even what questions I should be asking? Dan?
Well, I mean, you need to just research a little bit, but realize you don't need to memorize the tax laws. I mean, nobody does. You just need some better questions and work with a professional. Questions such as, how will this choice affect my taxes this year and potentially next year? Again, like Caleb said earlier, you don't want to wait till the last minute and just have it be a big surprise.
Yeah.
Which of our income sources are predictable and which ones may fluctuate? Am I assuming everything will be the same next year as it was last year? And that's a big one right there, and especially with financial planning, because, there are things in our financial life that even if the tax laws didn't change, just because I got a year older, required minimum distributions, there's a perfect example.
Yeah.
I mean, if you've got tax qualified plans and, you reach required minimum distribution age, regardless if you need the money or not, Uncle Sam says,
coming.
hey, you got to take some money, and that's going to do what?
Yeah.
Affect your taxes, which could potentially affect your IRMA taxes, the Medicare surtax, like Caleb said. So, again, it's planning and knowing all those things, what questions to ask, because that can potentially reveal where your plan is and where you really aren't aligned in your plan. And that alignment is what may help you avoid a nasty shock going forward. You've heard me say the saying, small hinges swing big doors. Sometimes small tweaks to your financial plan and your tax planning can make a huge change, huge difference now and in the future.
So if I ask the right questions, I've got my plan put together. We know that if I've done some planning, I know when those required minimum distributions are going to hit. So I have all this put together in my plan. But what does that look like for my taxes from a clarity standpoint, Caleb? So if I can see all this, we can plan for it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the hard part is how do the everyday person that's not in this every day see that picture clearly and have clarity to do that?
You
and
talk to professionals.
Yeah.
That's what you do.
Well, and that's what we're here for, to and help. And we use software that can be a visual aid or things like that too, or other examples to help show that. But clarity is helping connect those dots between the decisions, the income, and the taxes, and how to coordinate those effectively. And this is, or hopefully helps give you fewer surprises, more confidence in your choices. Like Dan said, hey, if you kind of feel like you messed up on your taxes every year, you're going to be less confident in your own decisions.
Yeah.
Hey, by lessening that, you do get more confident. And it helps you have a calm, informed conversation with your spouse, your advisor, your tax person about what are we actually doing? What proactively now do we need to do this year? We just look backwards.
Yeah.
Now what can we do this year going forward for the other 9 months? And it does help, make looking forward and being proactive a lot easier because, again, some of these things that are going to come up, or those trade-offs, how one decision is going to affect the other, or you have an advisor that can help you, hey, if this happened in March, this is what it's going to look like in December.
So with the time of the year and people getting into taxes, maybe you're motivated and you say, that's not going to happen again. I need to talk to somebody, right?
That's exactly right.
Get these worked out. So wrap this all up for me, Dan. Put a bow on it here.
Well, I guess to kind of close this up, remember, that nasty tax surprise that's potentially out there, that's a message, not a punishment. Mm-hmm. And, your finances aren't cruel. They're just honest. They really are. And taxes often show you where the gaps are. And remember, you don't need to fix everything today. You just need to start watching for the signals before they become full-blown emergencies.
Yes. And
again, speak with your own tax professional regarding your specific situation. Again, know where you stand. And, a saying that I always remember, and it's always stuck with me is, and when it comes to dealing with taxes, it's so important. It's not always about what you make. It's about what you get to keep.